Mhm. So I hope you all can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Um, uh, are you seeing the presentation or the other screen?
The presentation.
Okay, good. So Santosh, already you provided a brief high-level background of why we are having this workshop today. Do you want to first share with all of us the actual model updates that were done before we started updating the guidelines?
Sure. Um, yeah, so we updated our activity-based model last year. We had a base year of 2014, and we wanted to update it to the 2019 as a part of the RDP-SCS effort. We don't, and the conformity requirement as well. We definitely needed to update to the recent years, at least that is valid within the 10 years time frame of the transportation conformity. So we decided to update the model last year. And what we did in that model update is we implemented the latest version of the DASIM. DASIM is the internal model of the activity-based model that captures the internal trips and internal travels within the Fresno County. So that's a main component of our activity-based model. And the model update was done by the consultant RSC. So they had some latest version of the DASIM, and we implemented that in the update. Some other changes in the model update was the use of recent dataset, which was consistent and which was appropriate to our 2019 base year. So some of the datasets were 2017 National Household Travel Survey, the traffic counts for 2019 obtained from the Caltrans as well as the local jurisdictions. The 2019 transit ridership obtained from the transit agencies. And the big change in the model was the use of replica data for the external auto and the truck trips. So we were using the statewide model in our previous version. And because we noticed few inconsistencies and outdated information in the statewide model, we decided we were exploring some other alternatives and we decided to go with the big data. So we have used the replica for this latest update of the AVM. Along with those changes, we also updated the socioeconomic and worker status set for the model inputs. Those data were mostly obtained from the state sources. Um, some other changes on the model update was the 2019 highway and the transit network. So this time when we did the update, uh, we did some quality control, quality check on the real ground data set, and we did some ground truths with the highway links and the transit networks to make it accurate to 2019. In terms of model enhancement, we added few elements like telecommuting, managed lanes, which can handle the HOV or the toll lanes and some other modes of the managed lanes. We also added the transportation network companies TNC mode that can handle the Uber, Lyft, and other taxi trips. We also added the truck restrictions feature within the model that can be helpful in restricting or allowing any truck movements within the county or city. Apart from those, the model cost was $2,010 in the previous version, and that was updated to the same base year, which is the 2019. Population synthesizer uses the updated census data set, which is 2015 to 2019. And with all these data sets and sources, we did a full calibration and validation of the base year and the validation was done with the traffic counts as well as the VMT from the HPMS. So that's how we completed our base year update last year. And as you all know, the SP743 is very closely tied to our activity-based model. And any change within the model will change the VMT thresholds and VMT calculation. So that triggers the need to look into the update of the SP743 guidelines as well. So we'll talk about it later in the presentation.
Thanks, Santosh. So continuing on, we took that updated model, and obviously, I'm sure over here, most of us have been using the ABM for the past 4 years, doing VMT calculations, and there were some issues identified, some nuances identified. So our focus was how to address those issues in this round of update. One of the big issue was external trips, IXXI trips, and how the model was calculating IXXI trips and some major inconsistencies between TAZs that we had noticed. I'm sure all of us noticed that. And in a little bit, Ravi is going to go into a lot more detail and explain the changes. But that's one of the major changes in this round of update is how the IXXI trips are being calculated, both for calculating the thresholds, the screening tool, as well as while we are using the Excel spreadsheet, the updated version, obviously, uh, how that has been updated for to account for this change in IXXI trips. Uh, as we mentioned in our information session a couple of months ago, now we have introduced three metrics instead of two. Previously, we only had VMT per capita and per employee. Now we have the OD VMT per service population. And so this kind of shows a high level overview of how each one of those are calculated. And then finally on to the project VMT calculation itself, which will be the spreadsheet that you will see shortly. And for that, Ravi is going to share and go through that spreadsheet and show all the details. So I will pause there, and then Ravi, you want to take over and go into the spreadsheet itself?
I'm gonna, do you mind like putting in the presentation? I just want to kind of go over a couple of details before we jump into the spreadsheet.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Hold on. Let me share again. You want me to go back a couple of slides?
Yes, not to this one, the one couple before, please.
Hold on. Okay.
Yes, yeah. So I think Ambrish and Santosh touched on it. The one of the big changes, at least on the SB743 side, is the internal external VMT. And as Santosh mentioned, we use replica. And before, so replica data as it came was used in the model itself, but it was in OD format. So it was directly used and added to the towards the end of the model for the OD matrices. But when we were looking for IXXI VMT for VMT per capita and VMT per employee, we had to kind of dig in a little bit more into the data and make certain assumptions and before we converted that into VMT per capita, VMT per employee. One of the big things that we did is, as you can imagine, internal, external data includes like all trips coming in, going out of the county. But for the modeling purposes and development of VMT metrics, especially VMT per capita and VMT per employee, we did not want to kind of throw in all the trips. We said, okay, which counties will have a regular interaction with Fresno County? in terms of household or employment in Fresno County. So based on discussions with the COG staff, we kind of said, okay, we are going to restrict or filter the IXXI trips to just the 10 neighboring counties. And we said, okay, we did 10 neighboring counties. How much of those trips consist of total trips? And as you can see, 90% of the trips were occurring within the 10 neighboring counties, which kind of made sense to us. And we said, okay, that's good data. We are not throwing out a lot of data sets. And that also helped us, if you imagine like just restricting your IXXI trips to the 10 neighboring counties, you're removing ultra long trips. For example, if somebody is traveling on that particular day from LA to Fresno, it's not a trip that's going to happen every day. So we were able to remove those ultra long trips. And the other thing we did was we kind of, when we went through and did the actual VMT calculations, if you remember, one of the things we did in the previous iteration was we had IXXI VMT in OD format. We were not able to kind of assign that OD VMT or disaggregate that OD VMT into household or like employment side. We didn't have a good data set. We relied on worker fraction table that was available from the COG model to kind of disaggregate that. But with Replica, we have a little bit more detail on where the household side is and where the employment side is, and a little bit more detail in the data that was used to kind of assign those trips and VMT towards household and employment side. And we did all of this. One thing I just want to note is that we did all of this only, and this would affect only VMT per capita and VMT per employee. As Amrish mentioned, one of the additional metric that we have included in the new guidelines is OD VMT per service population. And for OD VMT per service population, the trip purpose doesn't matter. We are supposed to include all trips, irrespective of trip purpose. So, and for OD VMT per service population, we went back and relied on OD VMT, IXXI OD VMT trip tables from the model itself. So there is a little bit of kind of, if you think about it, there is a little bit of disconnect when we talk about IXXI and then IXXI. It's not a simple addition of IX plus XI is XX, which is used in OD VMT per service population. I know we were trying to kind of make the model better and improve it. We have certainly improved it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have still have some issues with it. We are still seeing some TAZs with higher IXXI VMT, and so I just wanted to note that as well. Can you go to the next one, Andrew? And in terms of the calculation itself, the calculation methodology or process doesn't change. What I mean by that is when you're doing VMT per capita, there are just two components, which is internal, external. When you're doing VMT per employee, it's the same thing, internal, external. Those are exactly same as before in terms of concept. OD VMT per service population, there are some specific uses. It depends on the land use that you're evaluating and the lead agency that want you to do the way or whichever VMT metric that they want the consultants to use. So, and the other thing for OD VMT per service population is typically, at least we'll speak for ourselves, is use autos and trucks, VMT, as we have seen quite a bit of questions being asked by SQL attorneys and stuff. So our suggestion was to add auto and truck VMT together. So can you go to the next one? In terms of the tools that are available to kind of work through these calculations, as before, to calculate VMT, you have existing scripts for VMT per capita and VMT per employee. Right now, we have not we didn't think about this. We don't have a script to do the OD VMT calculations using the OD matrices from the model. That might be something that we probably will do in the next few weeks. Internal, external VMT, similar methodology like before. We are going to do the VMT, use the VMT spreadsheet. One of the changes in methodology that we are suggesting is previously, what we have done is we went to the spreadsheet, looked at the IX VMT per capita or XI VMT per employee from the spreadsheet and used that number to add to the II VMT of the project. One of the things we have seen is there is a lot of, as Ambrish and Santosh pointed out before, there were a lot of inconsistencies that were happening just because how the data came out. And one of the other things I would like to point out here is when the COG model was updated, the LEHT data, which was available at a block level, or I think LEHT data is even at a point level. So LEHT data was available, which was used to update worker fraction table in the model. That worker fraction table is very specific to the base year, and it was like we were not sure if the same worker fraction approach would apply to the forecast or planning level application. So what we did was we said we want to kind of normalize the IXXI VMT per capita or per employee based on CSTDM zone. Each CSTDM zone has multiple Fresno COG zones. That way, whatever noise is happening in one zone is kind of dumbed down and an average can be obtained, which we thought is more applicable for like a planning project level application. So I think I did mention when we are looking at the VMT per service population, it is called IXXI, but it's not a simple calculation of IX plus XI.
Yeah, Ravi, if I may add here, so when we were looking at, so let's say you have 10 zones, 10 Fresno COG zones in one CSTDM zone, right? And we are trying to figure out, okay, if a project is coming in, you're creating a new zone, what will be the project's IX or XI, right? Depending on whether it's per capita or per employee. So instead of going by just the parent zone's IXXI, we are looking at all the 10 or 12 zones, and we had to define a geography. So that's why we use the CSTDM zone boundary as the geography for looking into it. But we kind of did a weighted average and said for project VMT calculation, that's the expected VMT, external VMT that's going to happen, right? So this kind of addresses the old issue. What we were having is for some zones, there were very large IX or XI because the parent zone had a very large IX or XI. So that's one adjustment. The second adjustment on this weighted average calculation is if, say, we saw there are 10 zones and one zone out of the 10 zones shows an abnormally high IX or XI, we didn't take that into the calculation of when we did the weighted average. We eliminated that because that's an anomaly of the out of the 10 zones, that one zone. And instead we used the other 9 zones, did an average of that, and that's how we came up with the IXXI value for that CSTDM zone. And that's what is going to get transferred over into the spreadsheet where we all are going to calculate the IX or XI for a project. So just wanted to add that to what Ravi you just said.
Yeah, thank you, Ambrish. Yeah. I think in terms of the slides, that's it, right? So,
Yeah, that's it for the slides.
I will try to share my screen. I'm trying to see if I can hide. I think it will go up by itself, but you guys can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. This is, if you remember from before, I think the previous spreadsheet only had like these, and we added, kind of as we talked about, we added the CSTDM zone and like the VMT per service population information in here as well. So it's the same process as before. In terms of usage, it is the same process as before, where you go in and put in a TAZ number, and you would get all the information for the TAZ. And then you also get the existing VMT metrics based on the model and LEHD data worker fraction that's used currently. And the yellow row that you see is for CSTDM zone. As we told before, we kind of combine all the zones within all the Fresno COG zones within a CSTDM zone and took a weighted average of IX VMT per capita to estimate this number. And like you can see the number will be different. In some cases, it might be higher. In some cases, it might be lower. Our suggestion is kind of to use the smoothed out IX VMT per capita or XI VMT per employee, because as we mentioned before, the current model is based on current data or observed data that is LEHD, and very specific internal external fractions were used for each TAZ. When you are looking into the future, we don't know if the project TAZ will exactly mimic the existing TAZ external trip patterns or not, but we can, at least with a relatively higher confidence level, can say, hey, if we look at the entire geography of a CSTDM zone, which is a much bigger area, we can say, hey, the characteristics of external trips from this area, I'm going to apply it to that particular TAZ. For VMT per service population, it will be, if you're looking at total VMT per service population, as you have done before in other jurisdictions, it's an addition of auto OD VMT plus truck OD VMT. I'll just go through the tabs real quick, and once we submit the Excel sheet to Fresno COG, they will kind of send it over to you guys for your applications.
Ravi, before you go into the next tab, I just wanted to note on the VMT per employee, the effect of the the approach that we came up with, we can clearly see there's a big difference. If you notice the individual TAS XIVMT per employee versus the XIVMT per employee within that bigger CSTDM zone. So that has gone down significantly. It looks like there were few TAZs, with exceptionally higher VMT or IX VMT per employee. So it kind of like went down when we took the combined average of the within that CSTDM zone.
Right. Yes.
And Santosh, thanks for highlighting that, because that's also one of the reasons why even in the thresholds, the VMT per employee changed quite a bit. VMT per capita was fine, but VMT per employees changed or got reduced substantially because of the change in approach of how we are looking at IXXI trips.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of the similar tabs. This is by TAZ. This one is summary by jurisdiction. There is a little bit of, as you can see, it's still a little bit of cleanup that is needed. These three tabs are directly, these two tabs are directly from the script outputs. You can just copy and paste them. I don't think you will update it, but essentially these come directly from the model, and these tabs are external work that has been done to kind of come up with this IXXI approach, and also figuring out the IX VMT per capita and per employee and VMT per service population. Any questions so far in terms of methodology? Excuse me. Okay.
Ravi, can you highlight the approach of this VMT per service population to this group on because this is fairly a new metric for us, and so we said we will have the OD VMT per service population, and that will include both the auto and the truck, right?
Correct. So, for example, if I'm looking at this TAZ, right, the ODVMT per service population would be kind of 45.74, which is II for auto, IXXI for auto, II for truck, and IXXI for truck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we be, or it just depends on how we want to calculate the total VMT per service population, right? This number will change a little bit if we decide to adopt this CSTDM number.
Right. Yes. Oh,
which
yeah.
is different than the individual
Yes.
tasks. And I think it's better to be consistent among the consultants to use the same methodology, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have or any suggestions you have on this calculation. But I think if we can adopt the same methodology across the consultants, that would be better, and that would look better on us as well.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, Santosh, we don't want to show in this spreadsheet two different IX VMT or XI VMT. If we all agree that we are going to use the CSTDM TAZ average weighted average, then we'll just show as an output that value, and then whatever is the total VMT per capita or VMT per employee. So that is one. One other clarification on VMT per service population. So auto and truck OD VMT per service population, that's fine. That is mostly for industrial projects. We also mention in the guidelines about some service-oriented land uses, for example, a hotel. where the new guidelines are suggesting using VMT per service population. Over there, the recommended approach is we need to consider the OD VMT for both the employees and the patrons. And while you're entering socio data, you're probably going to enter just the number of employees. But the number of patrons, you will find it out when the model has already run through, and it kind of shows how many users are coming to that facility, right? And so that becomes your population. So service population, your employees are from your value that you entered, but the population part of it comes post the model run. So for such uses, you may need to do some manual calculation to come up with the PMT per service population rather than using the spreadsheet for it, especially for the population side of things. So just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, thank you, Ambers. And I believe for the hotels, um, we do not count the truck ODVMT, right?
I mean, there are no truck. I mean, there are hardly any trucks. I mean, your
Exactly. I
model
mean,
will
it
not.
just
Yeah,
depends on if that's a motel kind of a thing, at the side of the highway where you would expect a lot of like, truck drivers to, stay. Um, but I think normally we wouldn't see much of a truck VMT around the
Mhm.
hotel's establishment. So
Right. And some of it will, those kinds of trips might get accounted through your XI trips or IX trips because those are kind of coming from outside the county, stopping at a motel overnight, and then leaving the next morning, right?
yeah,
Since we are talking about trucks, one more clarification on trucks. Truck trip table in the model is also a fixed trip table. So what I mean by that is if you add, like, let's say a big warehouse in the model, you're in a separate PAZ, that PAZ will not have any truck trips because that PAZ is not included in the original truck trip table. So you may still have to do some professional judgment and parent zone or other methodologies to do the truck VMT in case you are using truck VMT in the OD VMT per service population. That's another clarification that I wanted to make because there is no truck trip generation in the model, right, Santosh? I think that's what I remember.
yeah, that's right.
So the industrial employment and truck VMT might be a little bit more, I wouldn't call challenging, but might require a little bit more professional judgment and probably other data sources if you have that as well. Any questions or concerns in terms of methodology or suggestions so far? I mean, I think it's pretty much the same methodology for before, except a few changes in terms of IXXI. And we went through a few PAZs by ourselves before, and like I can just show some of these anomalies for whatever reason. For example, we were looking at one zone where you can see 930 or 931 IXVMT per capita, which doesn't make any sense. And as you can see, it's based on one person in that entire zone. So do we use that? No, right? Like, and IXVMT per capita for the CSTDM makes, so for the CSTDM PAZ makes more sense. So that's kind of essentially where we were coming from in terms of suggesting using CSTDM zone rather than one zone itself. And one other thing, Santosh, I know you wanted to check 2771, which I kind of said VMT per capita is okay. You can see the VMT per employee is 0. And surprisingly, for the entire CSTDM zone is 0 as well, because there is very little land use or socioeconomic data in all of those TAZs. We went back and looked at replica data, and it had it didn't have a lot of trips, XI or IXXI trips to those zones. Whatever IXXI trips that were happening in those zones were completely attributed to the household being there and not employment. So this might be another place where I kind of don't know what the recommendation is right now, but I just wanted, as we came across this, I just wanted to bring that up as well. Because if we are looking at CSTDM zone, the adjacent zones also don't have any VMT per employee, XI VMT per employee. So a lot of zones surrounding this TAC doesn't have any XI VMT. So Santosh, I mean, I don't mean to put you on spot, but any suggestions on here, like where it is 0?
Yeah, I was honestly surprised that even the CSTDM zone around this particular TAZ doesn't have any, employee related VMT. So it is on the northern side of the Clovis, just outside the Clovis city limit. So it falls under the unincorporated region of the county of Fresno. A lot of residential developments are happening around this area.
Right.
And I already see there are two big communities being developed by Lennar within this TAZ, but yeah, so it is definitely something we would have to apply some judgment here if we have to do the VMT per employee in this TAS.
And for some cases that we looked at, they were pretty close. For some cases that we have seen before, like from an abnormal normal value to a reasonable value. So if you look at an individual TAZ, it varied quite a bit. I think I covered it all. I don't like Amber, Santosh. Are we missing anything?
Yeah, I think the VMT methodology and the spreadsheet wise, I think we are good unless we have any questions from the group. But I think do we want to go into the VMT screening maps after this, Ambrish and Ravi?
I mean, I will have, this is Mike Aronson, I will have questions about how to handle new TAZs in the spreadsheet. That's always been our biggest challenge, but I don't know if you want to wait till later on that.
I think we can go ahead and get into that discussion, Mike.
Ravi, you want to explain that?
Sorry, like I didn't get Mike's question.
So what Mike is asking is, how when we do the VMT calculations, right, we are isolating the project.
Right.
So essentially we are creating a new TAZ.
Mhm.
And so Mike is asking if what the new recommendations are and if anything that's changing.
Not really, Mike. So what?
Actually, and to be clear, there were never specific. I mean, I've talked to Santosh, and I think I've followed what he recommended for how to assume IXXI VMT for new zones. But then when I saw other versions of the workbook, I realized that LSA might actually be doing it differently than I was, and I think I was following Santosh's directions. But so there is no standard documented methodology of how to do it. So I want to make sure I can do it in a consistent way from now on.
So
So
that
that
is the
so
whole.
don't assume that we were doing it consistently before.
No, that's fine. What I'm saying is that is the whole reason why we went through this exercise of fixing the IXXI, because we also noticed it, right? And I think one of the reasons why our results may not have been matching is we were applying our judgment. When we saw 900 miles of external IXXI values, we said this is not realistic. This is not what's going to happen. And so we didn't have a quote unquote official approach at that time, but we were applying kind of what you see now officially being updated, kind of a similar approach back then. But that was the the change we were applying when we saw such crazy high IXXI trips. Now that has been addressed through this update of the tool, and which is why we are recommending using the CSTDM weighted average. And so my belief is that we all will be using the same approach across the board. Yes, there still will be a couple of TAZs here and there where there might be questions. This one is a good example, 2771. But for most part, we all will be on the same page. We all will be using the same approach now.
No,
Just
I
just
I I appreciate. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Mike, just wanted to clarify. I believe I recommended you to go with the methodology of looking into the parent TAZ for the external component, and if you don't see the realistic number within that parent TAZ, or if you see that is a blank and doesn't have something similar to this one, then maybe we would go into the neighboring TAZ to adopt the appropriate IX or the XI. So I think that's how the Kittleson, Mike, you might have done, and the LSA might have gone into the CSTDM approach back then. So
Uh,
are
yeah,
you?
no, I never looked
Maybe
at this.
I
We
think
never looked at CSTDM. We
right.
did and there's two different issues here. There's the issue of whether we're getting reasonable values or not. For the reasonable values, we would usually look at a circumference around our project TAZ and take an average of like a weighted average of the TAZs around our TAZ, which
When you do that kind of a buffer analysis, what would be your usual distance? How far you will go to circumscribe the TACs
just
around?
the next adjacent, all the ones that touch our project TAZ.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that always gave reasonable values, I think, pretty much every time. But the bigger problem I've had is when we've used new TAZs to define our project rather than existing TAZs. We would add, and we do that for every project we run, is we add one or more new TAZs. When we add the new TAZs, of course, the model doesn't have any XI, at least the old version of the model had no XI, so we had to go into it's the VMT sum tab, the next tab on this workbook, and we would find a way to adapt IXXI. And our method was to go straight to the parent TAZ and just use the IXXI VMT per capita or VMT per employee from the parent TAZ. But I think LSA had a more complex methodology that involved some of the IX worker percents and things like that. And I was never clear on that.
Yeah, I mean, the goal was
But the
mine.
results are very different. The results
Yeah,
are very different depending on whether you just take the parent TAZ or whether you do the more complex calculation that I think LSA was doing.
yeah, but the goal was to get rid of those crazy high IXXI values because they didn't make
No,
sense.
this is a separate issue, Ambrish. That this is assuming we have perfectly. When you run a new TAZ, you have 0 for the IXXI in the coming out of the model, right? Because there was never the IXXI was only assigned to the official TAZs, not the new TAZs we add.
No, I
You know,
know that. But if
yeah.
you are taking an average of
No, no, no,
just.
no, no. Two different issues. Two different issues. I'm sorry. The averaging is only for if we have an unreasonable IXXI, but I'm talking about what is the recommended methodology let's assume everything's reasonable. What is the recommended methodology when you add a new TAZ to get your IXXI VMT? Can you show me on the VMT sum sheet here how you guys do it? Let's say I usually always add number 2856 down at the bottom. So now I've run my project in 2856. It has no IXXI. How do you recommend we get the IXXI for a new TAZ?
So the new methodology, Mike, is just to use this. So that's what Santosh was saying. Everybody kind of will be consistent. For example, you put in your project in a new TAZ.
Yeah, put in 2856.
56. No, 2856 will not come in like show anything because everything will be zero, right? But
Yeah.
your 2856, what is the parent zone number, right? That's
Right.
essentially what we are trying to say here is, yes, you put in your 124, which is the parent TAZ,
Right.
right? Typically, this number was what we were supposed to use, right? And
Right. That's what I've been doing. Okay, good. So I was doing it correctly.
yes,
That's what we've been doing. Yes.
Yeah.
now,
So,
yeah.
Ravi, so if I can just make it clear, so that was the recommended process in the earlier version, and that's what I suggested you to do, Mike. And LSA was saying that they also kind of adopted the same methodology in most of the cases, but only in some exceptional cases where if there is missing number within that parent TAZ, they could not find anything in the neighboring TAZ that is reasonable, then they would come up with some other approach of doing that. But the principle or the main recommended methodology is to look for the parent TAZs.
Okay, good. Yeah. I'd seen some, and I know like in the VMT tool, the GIS tool, there was some very different numbers from those results sometimes. So I thought maybe there was a more elaborate, a more complex methodology that I was missing.
Oh, no.
And just to add to what Santosh said and what you already said, Mike, we are kind of suggesting that like the approach that you said you guys are using, but we are going instead of just the neighboring TAZ, we wanted to make it more generic and use kind of some other geography as our anchoring point, and that's essentially what we the update is like average it do a weighted average based on CSTDM zone. It's very exactly same as what you guys were doing instead of neighboring TAZs.
Well, a little different, Ravi, because we are also getting rid of the anomalies when we
Right,
are calculating the CSTDM weighted average.
right.
So that's where it's different. And that's why I was going back and saying the IXVMT cleanup that has been done, or XIVMT cleanup that has been done, should help us address that issue when what we were having before, trying to create new zones. Because the new zone will not have any of these values. So we are borrowing that value from somewhere, right? Now, if those values that we are borrowing didn't make sense or had anomalies, then that created problems for us. And then we all, as modelers, used our own judgment and our own approaches to kind of clean that up. And that's maybe one of the reasons why our results will always not match. But now we are creating this consistent approach that if we all agree that that is what we are going to use, and it makes sense, obviously, because I can't see why an IX or XI trip will be 900 miles. That doesn't make any sense. So we do the weighted average, getting rid of the anomalies, use that and add that to II, and that gives us the result for the new zone that we create. So the II comes from the model run, the IX comes from the CSTDM, from the parent. We just enter the parent TAZ number, and then we add it up, and that's our result.
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear we were doing it more or less correctly the last couple of years.
We all were, Mike. It's just, you can always take numbers and treat them differently, right? Okay. Any other question on this? Thanks for that question, Mike. I think it helps everyone. Okay. Should we move on to the screening tool then?
Yes, let's do that.
Ravi, let me see if I can pull it up.
And just when Amberis and Ravi is coordinating on that VMT screening map, I think most of you were part of that information session held in back in June, and just wanted to again notify that we are not going to continue the VMT calculator tool. We are taking it down because it was uh, causing some inconsistency issue between the model runs and the VMT calculator results. So since we could not have the reliable result coming out from the VMT tool um, in majority of the cases, or I would say in most of the cases, we decided to take it down, and just if the project doesn't qualify under the screening criterias, then it has to go through the full model run. Yeah, I think with that we can go into the VMT screening map.
Yeah, so this is the new map. I think you all saw this during our presentation a couple of months ago. There were some minor kinks in this. We cleaned it up. So this is pretty much all good to go now. This is very similar to the last application, except it's a lot more simplified because now we are only using 13% as the threshold. And so the three options you have is residential, employment, and service population rather than 13, 15, city, county. So there were 6 buttons. Now we are down to just 3. So that's pretty straightforward. There is a link to the user guide on the top left. If you click on that, it takes you to the updated user guide for this tool. And then if you want to, for whatever reason, if you want to look at the previous tool for reference, there is a link here for the legacy's previous tool. Basically, we will eventually take this down, but because now we are transitioning from the old to the new, we thought of keeping this up for a while, but eventually we will take this link down. So just wanted to let you know. And the rest is pretty similar. All of you have used this. The functionality and everything is the same. You see things at a TAZ level, you click on it and you see the pop-up come up. And if you zoom in further, it will take you to a parcel level as well. So that is pretty much about the tool itself. Santosh recently brought up a very good point, and I think it's good, Santosh, if we share it with everybody, was when we are applying the high quality transit screening criteria, how do we apply it for a project? So if you will notice in the tool, when we have things at a TAZ level, like for example, I'll click on this TAZ. So you can see it's partially in a high quality transit zone, TAZ. And if I click on it, it says no. And the reason it says no is because it's partially in that zone, not the entire TAZ is in a high quality transit zone. That's why as a conservative screening, we are saying no. However, if we zoom in and get to a parcel level, and then we click on this. No, sorry, to click on the right one. I need to go into the, hold on, just give me 1 minute. Yeah, now we have the parcels. So if we click on the parcel itself, it says yes, because that parcel by itself is entirely in the high quality transit area. So just something to remember when we are screening projects using this criteria, that it's advisable to get into the parcel level. And what we have done is at a parcel level, though, because parcels are much smaller, even if it is partially included, we have said yes. So just wanted to make that clarification. Otherwise, it's the same tool. One of the other changes that we have done is for TAZs where there is very little data, either population for residential or employment for employees. We did not color code those TAZs because there is not enough data available to provide a value for such TAZs. So it is recommended that when we have a project in such TAZs that we actually run it through the model to determine what the VMT per capita or per employee will be for those zones. I think that is it. Santosh, did I miss anything else?
No, I think that's pretty much it on the VMT screening tool. And the high quality transit area, if you notice it, then it had changed slightly from the last version. I mean, this is already updated within the model, within the map itself, but just the area, if you notice, it has expanded to two more routes. So altogether, there are 4 transit routes that qualifies as a high transit corridor, and the buffer tool has been updated accordingly. Other than that, yeah, I think that's all we have on the VMT screening tool. I personally, I like it. It's clean, it's more concise, and it's very easy to follow through compared to the last version. Any questions regarding the VMT screening maps? Okay. So what do we have next? Is there anything, Amberis, on your side?
I think that was all we wanted to cover today. Both the calculator, not calculator, but how the new methodology to calculate VMT, and then just a quick overview of the screening tool.
Okay. So if there are no more questions, then I would just like to go into the next steps and make some announcement. So just lastly, we wanted to make sure that everybody is okay with the IXXI methodology that Ravi and Amber is presented just now, and we are going to have only one metric in the VMT spreadsheet when we deliver it to you. That will be based on the CSTDM zone average numbers. So that is one thing. And then we will be updating our VMT website, the SP743 VMT website, with all these new informations in a week or so. So I think we still have a little bit to clean up on the VMT map. So that will be taken care of within our next couple of days, and then we can go ahead and upload that resource into our website. Then we'll also upload the guidelines, updated guidelines, and the technical report along with the VMT screening maps. So this is within the transition period, as I mentioned in the beginning of the meeting. This is we will be coordinating with the member agencies, and it's up to them on when they want to start using the updated resources. So we will have both of these resources on our website for a couple of months, and then maybe by the beginning of October or the end of the October, we'll take the older resources down, and you would have to go with the new guidelines only. Mike, I saw your hand raise.
And I just blanked on my question, so I'll think of it in a minute. Go ahead.
Okay, no worries. And then we will I think in a next couple of weeks we will also compile the VMT spreadsheet once we clean up the VMT spreadsheet and then the model files. So we will compile all those files and then we'll deliver it to all of the consultants so that you can start downloading those resources and start using it when you think it's appropriate to use the new guidelines in coordination with the respective consultant, developers, or the city or the county. So yeah, that's all I have as an announcement. Mike, yes.
Okay, now I remember. With the new model, I assume we've reset the regional averages, right? So as soon as we start using the new model, the new version of the model, it's a different regional. So we don't have to, before we were doing that kind of factoring, the previous model to new, the 2021 version of the model or whatever, we would factor things back. Now we just can use the model output directly, right? Because it's the new baseline, right?
That is correct, Mike. And sorry for
Okay,
all
that's
the
great.
inconvenience. Back then we had a different version, so we had to come up with a factor. But it's a straight modeling result, and whatever that comes out of the model is going to be applied or compared against the threshold.
Okay, so as soon as we start using the newer version of the model, we'll be reporting those newer regional thresholds, right? In our studies.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions on this? All right, looks like we are good with it. And as always, feel free to reach out to me or consultant LSA if you have any questions regarding any of the contents that are being presented today. And we will, when we are ready with all the resources and the model related files, I will reach out to you all and I will transfer all those files to you so that you have it when you have the new projects to analyze using the new guidelines. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your time, and thank you for attending this workshop.
Thank you for all the hard work, both LSA and Fresno COG. We appreciate all the hard work you put in.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.